When the Work's All Done This Fall was written by D.J. O'Malley. D.J. O'Malley was the son of a cavalryman who was stationed at Fort Billings, Montana. When he was a young man, he saw the XIT cowboys coming up the trail, and he was standing right by his father at the time. His father turned to him and said, "Son, those are the cowboys that came all the way up from Texas from the XIT outfit to get good grass on this Montana range for the summer." The boy kept watching these fellows and he said, "Dad, I don't want to be a military man. I want to be like them." So at a very young age, he became one of the best cowboys in the whole Northwest. And he became known as a rep. A rep at the time was a man who represented cattlemen in buying cattle and selling cattle. However, he was involved in a lot of trail drives. And this song, When the Work's All Done This Fall, was written about a phenomenon that is very little understood today, because we don't drive thousands and thousands of cattle anymore long distances. The greatest danger to 19th century trail drovers wasn't rustlers and it wasn't Indian attacks like you see in the Hollywood movies. The greatest danger was the weather. Thousands of cattle running in the middle of the night scared by lightning and storm and tornado is really a terrifying prospect, and it could wipe out a very valuable herd to a cattleman. What happened in the middle of the night? How did they deal with it? Well, usually they knew that the storm was coming just from wind coming up and stuff like that. But what happened was one cowboy would usually volunteer to get out in front of the herd, take out his 6-gun, and drop the lead steer. No trail drive could really happen without a lead steer that all these thousands of cattle followed. It was a valuable animal. So after they became accustomed to following this steer, if they were running and panicking, they were still following that steer. A cowboy could get in front, drop that lead steer to the ground, and hopefully those cattle would follow him. Well, that's in a perfect world. In that perfect world, they would spiral into themselves and it would slow down the stampede. This would call getting the cattle milling again. But it's not a perfect world. Many times that cowboy would lose his life. So it was something that really moved 19th century cowboys to know that somebody gave their life for the outfit. In the 19th century, loyalty was an extremely important thing to Victorian people. And you did your duty, you got out there and did it. Something that we've lost today. You appreciated the fact that you had a job from an employer and you were willing to give your life. If the cowboy lost his life, of course, there'd be a burial out on the range. They had no way to take people back. And usually just a small injury could cause somebody to lose their life. If an infection developed in a wound or anything like that, there was no real doctor, except sometimes the man who ran the chuck wagon had a little bit of medicine, but you didn't take along an EMT in those days. In this song, the cowboy volunteers, loses his life, and they're reflecting on this throughout the song. Of course, D.J. O'Malley was an Irishman, and he had grown up around the traditional music of his people, so it was only natural just to take a melody that seemed to work with the rhythm of the lyric or the poem that he wrote and set that to a traditional melody. This was done a lot in cowboy music, and we'll be talking about that in these other segments that we do. Irish music was probably the primary background music for almost every 19th century cowboy song, with the exception of a little bit of Latino music creeping in from the Mexicans, who actually took their sounds from the Irish, because polka and that kind of music, very popular in Ireland, was very popular in Mexico. So here's a tribute to one of the older cowboys who volunteered to turn the herd. Keep in mind, older was about 20 or 30 years old, as the average age of death in 1900 was 40 years old. The cowboys never got over this sacrifice that he made. The weather came up, maybe a little bit of warning, but not the kind of warning that we get today. And all of a sudden it was on top of them, and somebody had to do the job. We could use men like that today.
jolly cowboys discussing plans at ease. Says one, I'll tell you something, boys, you will listen, please. I'm an old cowpuncher, you see me dressed in rags. I used to be a good one, boys, and I went on great big jags. I've got a home, boys, a good one, you all know, though I haven't seen it since very long ago. Going back to Dixie once more to see them home. I'm going to see my mother when the work's all done this fall. When I left my home, my mother for me cried. She begged me not to go, boys, for me she would have died. Mother's heart is aching, breaking for me, that's all. With God's help I'll see her when the work's all done this fall. Very night this cowboy went out to stand his guard. Night was dark and cloudy, it was storming very hard. Cattle, they got frightened and they rushed in wild stampede, and the cowboy tried to head them while riding at full speed. Riding in the darkness so loudly he did shout, trying hard to head them, turn the herd about. His saddle horse did stumble, and upon him it did fall. He won't see his mother when the work's all done this fall. His body was so mangled, the boys all thought him dead. They picked him up so gently, they laid him on a bed. He opened up his blue eyes, and looking all around, he motioned to his comrades to come near him on the ground. He said, send my mother my wages, boys, the wages I have earned. I'm so afraid, boys, the last steer I've turned. I'm headed for a new range, I hear the master call. I'll not see my mother when the work's all done this fall. So Fred, you take my saddle, George, you take my bed, Bill, take my old pistol after I am dead. Please think of me kindly when you look upon them all. I'll not see my mother when the work's all done this fall. Charlie was buried at sunrise, no tombstone for his head. Nothing but a little board, and this is what it said. Charlie died at daybreak, and he died from a fall. He'll not see his mother when the work's all done this fall.